your brains.
Pop culture.
Happy birthday, America. 250 years of independence, and with that, the right to choose who you put in the White House. And a little known perk of residing in the White House is that for a time, you had your own private cinema, as in 1942, FDR converted an old cloakroom into the White House Family Theatre, where it stood until last year when it was demolished for Trump's ballroom. And the theatre got its films directly from the Motion Picture Association of America or from the studios, meaning the White House family had access to any film, old, new, or even yet to be released. While it seems FDR and Truman barely used the theatre from 1953 to 1986, the White House had an actual projectionist who kept detailed notes. So what's the most popular film among American presidents? That honour goes to 1952's High Noon. Eisenhower, Reagan and Clinton all consider it a favourite. In fact, Clinton watched it 17 times and recommended it to George W. Bush when he took office. Which president watched the most films though? Well, Bill Clinton watched 170 films over his 2 terms and would often have discussions about the film afterwards, and he even said that the theatre, not Camp David or Air Force One, were the best perk of the presidency. He also apparently loved the film American Beauty, about an older man pining after a younger woman. Oh no. Eisenhower surpasses him though with over 200 films, mostly westerns, in 2 terms. But there's one president who was a true film buff, and that is Jimmy Carter, who watched 480 films in a single term, an average of 1 film every 3 nights. The first film he watched while in office was All the President's Men, about the investigation of the Watergate scandal, the fallout of which actually kind of led to him getting the presidency. And Nixon was watching a movie when the Watergate break had happened, incidentally. He was watching the Skin Game in the Bahamas. Nixon was also unhealthily obsessed with the film Patton, and while it was popular among presidents, his obsession possibly led to the invasion of Cambodia, as he had watched the film briefly before making that decision. His former vice president and eventual successor Gerald Ford, though, favoured comedies and musicals as he found them relaxing, but he said he was never much of a moviegoer. Thanks, Jerry. JFK didn't often use the theatres as the seats would aggravate his chronic back pain, so whenever he did, a more comfortable rocking chair would be brought in for him. One of the first films he did watch, though, was the 1961 film The Misfits, the final role of Marilyn Monroe, which he watched with his wife. Awkward! There's another instance when JFK had a mystery guest at the theatre when Jackie was out of town. The projectors would not reveal who it was. It may have been another Dalian. So I don't want to say JFK invented Netflix and chill, but I'm not saying he didn't either. Ronald Reagan, meanwhile, usually watched movies at Camp David, his favourite of which was The Sound of Music. At one instance, he apparently even watched it instead of reading a briefing book for an economic summit, explaining to his chief of staff that he didn't read it because, well, Jim, The Sound of Music was on last night. That's right, even the president gets in trouble for not doing his homework. Other minor asides, LBJ's most watched film was a 10-minute documentary narrated by Gregory Peck about himself that he forced other people to watch. George H.W. Bush once directly called the MPAA, much to their shock, for a copy of The Hunt for Red October. And his son, George W., was more into comedies and would apparently go around impersonating Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. And he knew he'd get on with Tony Blair when Blair and his wife suggested they watch Meet the Parents with the Bushes. Obama has great taste. He still puts out an annual list of his favourite films each year, and you should check those out. Biden apparently grew more concerned about AI than ever before after seeing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, and Trump's first film in office was Finding Dory. But he's also watched Sunset Boulevard and Joker. There's a political joke in there somewhere.